Once again, namaste, good evening, and a very warm welcome to one more book review. We have done 2 reviews in Jan and Feb, and that was done by me. And this time around, we have our guest who is joining us. That is Miss Preeta Chaudhary, and you must have seen her. Let me pull up her picture. So that's where she is. She's right there in person. She's a tech person and not much to do with healthcare. And I came to know about Preeta through my other friend Indrani, and they both of them together have started this new venture called yeah. That's the time they got in touch with me and that they wanted some nurse to join them. And this, whatever their idea was to my heart, I had to say yes to them because I also believe in what they were starting, one technology platform for nurses for everything, one stop, whether it is employment, other opportunities, or upskilling opportunities, learning opportunities. So the website has been just launched recently, and I hope many of you will actually go register. It is nurseindia.org. And Preeta is the co-founder of Nurse India. So talking about Preeta, I know her as the tech person and very much focused. And then I was asking both of them, March is open for guests to come and review the book that they want. And I asked Preeta, would you like to share a book review? What kind of book you read? She told me biography. So I said, okay, any biography you can share. And she told me, I would like to share Florence Nightingale. I was taken aback and I was feeling a bit guilty. I'm a nurse and I have not yet read her, biography in total. I have read her, notes, nursing notes. That book I have read, not even completely, but I not know a lot about our founder through and other things. So I was pleasantly aback that, Preeta will review Florence Nightingale, who is not a nurse. It's nothing to do with healthcare. Probably now she's coming to know of healthcare and, nursing in particular, And Florence Nightingale definitely cannot be only called as the founder of modern nursing. She was much more for sure. So without much ado, Preeta, let me ask you come here with a very, very big welcome and also a huge round of gratitude towards you for agreeing to spend this time with all of us. And we are getting it recorded, and this will be on our YouTube channel, and then hopefully, more nurses will be able to see what you are sharing today. So thank you so much for being here, and Preeta, a very, very warm welcome to you. So it is totally over to you now, and I'm going to stay quiet. No audio, no video, so the streaming can happen uninterrupted. And I really hope the people who are here can interact with Preeta once she finishes the review. Ask her questions that what did she see in Florence Nightingale? Obviously, you will hear, but I never heard anyone talk about Florence Nightingale, through a book review. I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you so much, and the podium is all yours.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Tankam. To begin with, first of all, thanks for this opportunity. Florence Nightingale is a personal hero of mine, and I am particularly happy and honored to be able to talk about her to a company of distinguished healthcare professionals. I'm really, really grateful for the opportunity. Thanks so much. And thank you everybody for being here today. It's a Saturday evening. I'm sure there are many interesting things everyone has to do on Saturday evenings. But I'm very grateful that you are all here. So thanks so much. What I'll do is, I have a few slides. I don't want to scare anybody by talking about slides. They're just pictures, and I thought they would sort of, push the story along. So I'm going to try and share the slides I got, and I'll use that to kind of help my whatever I want to say, right? So I'm hoping that everyone is able to view the slides.
Yes, Preeta, we can see.
Okay, great. Right. So that's the book we're talking about. I'm going to go straight in. The book is called Florence Nightingale, The Woman and Her Legend. And it's by a gentleman called Mark Bostridge, who's done a bunch of historical biographies. He's won several awards, particularly for this book. This is a very well-regarded book. This is not by any means the only biography of Florence Nightingale. Many have been written. She was a sort of a hero to the British people and to the world during her lifetime. So many biographies of her have been written, and there are films and series and so on and so forth. But this is one of the later ones. So it was published in 2008. It's based actually on her letters to her family, and she was a prolific letter writer. So she wrote a lot. She wrote to government, she wrote to family, she wrote to friends and acquaintances, etc., etc. Letter writing was one of her ways of carrying on her work. So extensive research has been done on that, and this book is sort of based on that. And like I said, it's won several prizes for historical biography writing. So that's Florence Nightingale, The Woman and Her Legend, by Mark Bostridge, right? So as Sankam said to begin, you might wonder why I am interested in Florence Nightingale, right? As she said, I am not a healthcare professional. So I think just to make this smoother, I should just tell you what I've done so far and what I do. So, I've never been associated with healthcare. I know nothing about nursing or any other sort of form of healthcare. I am a graduate of economics and an MBA actually. And for the longest time, I worked in the analytics area, statistical methods, analytics, technology, in those sorts of areas. Very recently, but all through the time, actually for a very long time, Florence Nightingale has been a personal sort of hero, like I said. I'll tell you why in a second. Recently, a friend of mine, Indrani, that Thankam was talking about, and I, we were talking, and we thought that there is a gap. Indian nursing needs a technology platform, which is built by nurses for nurses. And that's what we're trying to do. We've just launched the website. It's called Nurse India, nurseindia.org. So, please go there, have a look, tell us what you think, register if you can. This is supposed to be by nurses. Thankam is sort of a prime mover in this. So we are hoping that, it's going to really appeal to the actual professional, and this is not, by an outsider. So please go have a look. But Nurse India is my first sort of connect with the nursing world, right? So then why am I interested in Florence Nightingale? The reason I have always been interested in Florence Nightingale is that she was a woman of many parts, right? She, of course, is a nursing pioneer. Along with that, she is also a pioneer in statistics. It's not a very well-known fact, but she is one of the early pioneers of statistical methods. She was a very keen mathematician and statistician herself. She, actually invented a couple of things which I'm going to talk about further on. She contributed deeply to that science. Along with that, I think she was a fantastic leader. She pioneered a whole new branch of hospital management, of hospital design. She pushed sanitation in households in the United Kingdom and across the world. She's impacted so many things. She's impacted a massive number of things that we take for granted in our lives today. As it tends to happen with a lot of women, she's only known for being the lady with the lamp, but she was a lot more than that, right? So that's really why I am personally very interested in her. I find her life very fascinating, right? So, like I said, she was a nursing pioneer. She invented a bunch of hospital management practices. She was a very sort of competent statistician, and she was a crusader. She was a crusader for health for everybody, including the people of India. And this book has some fascinating facts about how she basically advised a lot of the governor generals of India. In fact, if you remember your history, we had a governor general called Lord Ripon, who was called Ripon the Good because he was one of the most benevolent governor generals, British governor generals we had. And Ripon the Good's chief advisor in Indian affairs was a lady called Florence Nightingale. So these are fascinating things that very few people know about Florence. She was an early supporter of Indian self-rule. Dadabhai Nauroji was standing for elections to British Parliament. The person who endorsed his candidature was Florence Nightingale. So these are amazing facts about Florence that we usually don't know about. This book has it also, highly recommended. And of course, she through her life, she's given us so many lessons in leadership. Imagine if this is the time Florence Nightingale was born in 1820. 1820, even in the advanced countries, she was born at a time when Britain was a very powerful nation. But women didn't have the vote. Women were not powerful in Britain or anywhere in the world at that time. And she was heading sanitary committees for the army. There were no women in the army, obviously. She was heading sanitary committees for the government at a time when women were not allowed to be members of sanitary commissions. So she couldn't officially be a member. She could only influence the committee, but she was the unofficial head of the committee. So imagine the kind of leadership that she had to be able to do something like that. So hers sort of is an incredible life, and I'm very happy to sort of share my thoughts about it. I want to pause for a second and ask you all to imagine the world in 1820. Right? Florence Nightingale is born on the 12th of May, 1820. I know the 12th of May is a very important date for all of you. It's coming up. But this is 1820, right? Imagine the world in 1820. In India, the British have sort of just taken over. The Mughals are out. In the UK, in Britain itself, Victoria is still not queen. They're just starting to get into the Industrial Revolution. It's becoming a powerful nation. It is not the most powerful nation in the world yet. But by the time Florence died, 90 years later, in 1910, Britain was by far the most powerful nation in the world. They'd had massive advancements in many things. They had the most powerful army. They had the best healthcare system in the world, and Florence had a lot to do with all of that, right? So that's sort of the span that she inhabited. Very, very long-lived woman for her time, and she made use of that long life for the sake of all of it, right? I'm going to talk a little bit because this is a book review, and I'm going to sort of just go over a little bit quickly about what's in the book, right? So the book starts with some background, what her family life was like, where her family came from, etc. It talks about her early life, what sort of things influenced her, how she came to nursing, right? How she became the lady with the lamb, which is, she was a legend in her own time. So how did she become that? It talks extensively about her contributions to the army. And then, it talks about her being an advisor to leaders. It talks about her professionalizing the profession of nursing, and, how that happened. And as advisor to leaders, it talks about her role in the administration of India as well, right? It's a very, very large and extensive book, very well written. I highly recommend that everyone read it, but it is 618 pages long. So it takes a certain amount of effort to read the book. So what I will do very quickly is talk about some of the aspects in the book that I really liked, and that sort of struck me, right? I'm going to talk about 2 or 3 things in particular. I'm going to talk about her time in the Crimea, where she became the lady with the lamb, right? So that's one thing I'll talk about. I'm going to talk about her contributions to army reform. and her contributions to statistics that came through that. I'm going to talk about her, obviously her nursing, her pioneering work in nursing. And then I will touch a little bit upon why she should be important for Indians, right? So those are the 4 things that I would, sort of briefly like to talk about. Before I go there, some background. She, Florence came from a very well-to-do family. In 1820, in well-to-do families, women were not sent to school. There were no schools for women. So, if you were born a girl, you studied at home. You had a governess, and you were taught things like, of course, history and geography, and a little bit of mathematics and things like that. But also sewing and household work, and how to manage a household and things like that, because the expectation was that at a certain age you would get married. There was no question of having a profession or doing anything outside the household, right? So that's sort of the family that she came from. It was a very loving family. She was very, very close to her sister and to her parents. They were also very well connected with the political sort of class of the time. They were very fierce abolitionists. So the abolition of slavery was something that was gaining ground at the time, and Florence Nightingale's father, William Nightingale, was one of the sort of key movers of that. So they were very liberal sort of a family, very in tune with the thought of the day. They were also very deeply religious family. Florence herself, had a great faith, and a lot of her sort of ideal of service and her motivation to go into the service of people came from her faith, right? So that was a key influence in her life. She was a very studious kind of person, very, very smart. She read a lot. She wrote a lot. She discussed a lot of things with the key people of the day. Charles Babbage came to her. They discussed, mathematics. Astronomers and scientists and so forth would keep coming to the house. And as a young woman, she got all those influences, and she was able to learn from those influences, right? But she had been feeling for a long time a little bit constricted in the home atmosphere, right? She constantly wanted to go out and to do something. And if you read her letters and so forth of that time, she is constantly talking about how difficult it is for well-born women to seek a profession. If you were born poor in the England of that time, you would have to work at something. But if you were born rich, there is nothing you could work at. All you could do is make calls, go and meet people, sew and do embroidery, and then get married and have children, and raise your children and run the household. So that is essentially all that you could do, and she was frustrated by it, right? She wanted to go out, she wanted to have a deeper influence on the world, and she was just not being allowed to do it. She kept asking her parents to be allowed to go out and look at certain early nursing colleges that had come up. These were all religious institutions. They would be sort of the sisters of nursing, essentially. But at that time, people who joined the profession typically came from lower income backgrounds. Her parents were very unwilling to let her go into that sort of milieu, and she faced a lot of opposition from them, right? But eventually she wore them down. And she went to this school in Germany at a place called Kaiserswerth, where there was an individual called Dr. Fleidner, who used to run a school. He and his wife used to run this nursing, sort of a small nursing school. And she went there for a few months. She learned the basics of how to tie bandages and how to take care of the sick and so on and so forth. So she came face to face with that. She was still reasonably young. And she enjoyed it very much. She found a calling. She thought that that's what God had made her for, and there are lots of letters where she talks about that. So that's how she started, and then someone that the family knew was setting up this small sort of establishment to take care of gentlewomen who had less money. So there were women like, who would be governesses and things like that. They would be highborn, but they would have very little money. And when they got old or sick, there was no one to take care of them. They were single women, essentially. So some charitable people came together and said, we should have a little place where these women are taken care of. But they needed someone to run the place, and they couldn't find anybody. And someone said to Florence, since you've gone to Germany and done this, maybe you should do this. So again, she worked with her parents, she wore them down, and eventually they said, fine, go and do that. So she moved to London. They used to live outside of London. She moved to London and set up this little thing. There were only about 27 people in her charge. And she was sort of asked to run the administration, provide the food, make sure that the patients were taken care of, etc. What she really wanted to do was set up a school for nurses, but she didn't she wasn't able to do that. But she did this for a while, and she was very good at it. In the meantime, what happened was that war broke out. So at this time, we are in the 1850s. Britain is a very strong power. And what happens is that out in Turkey, the Russian Empire is sort of growing big, and they sort of invaded a part near Turkey called the Crimea, which is near the Black Sea. And Britain felt very threatened because they were coming close to Britain's trade routes to India. India was the crown jewel. They didn't want Russia to threaten India. So Britain got into this war with Russia. And, they sent off 60,000 soldiers to the Crimea, to the Black Sea. And they immediately got terribly sick. They were not prepared. This was a very, very long journey. The conditions were terrible. So the soldiers were having a very tough time, right? So the army decided that they needed a hospital. They already had a field hospital, but they needed something where they could house more soldiers and they would be better taken care of, and so forth. And the Secretary of War at the time, Cygnia Herbert, was a friend of the family of the Nightingales, right? Very close friend. And he knew that Florence had been doing all of this stuff, on a small scale. So he said, look, do you want to do this? Can you take a company of 40 nurses and, go off to the Crimea and set up this thing? And Florence said, of course, I would love to do this. And her family said, this is a terrible idea. I mean, why would you do that? So anyway, she wore them down again. And, I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a bit. In fact, let me go there now. So this is what it is. I want you to look at this map. So if you start at London in the top left corner, and then you have to go right over to Istanbul, right? That's where her hospital was, at a place called Scutari. And it was a 15-day journey at the time. So she set out in October of 1854. She went to Paris. So she first took a ship to Calais, and then went by carriage to Paris, and then went down to Marseille, which is on the coast of France. And from there they took a ship that would take them all the way to Istanbul, right, which was Constantinople at the time. It was a 15-day journey. And at this point, Florence is she's only 34 years old, right? She's a 34-year-old single woman. She has had very little training as a nurse. I mean, there was no one that was giving her training as a nurse, even less so as a hospital administrator. But she's taking 40 women and going off 3,000 miles away, traveling 15 days. And, to set up a hospital that she knows absolutely nothing about, right, for the army. And, she's a woman, the army doesn't really respect women's opinions at this point. It's 1850. But, she's doing it. So, I mean, imagine the bravery and the sort of courage of this woman who at the age of 34 decides that she can do this for the entire British Army, right? So anyway, she goes there. She had a lot of foresight. So while she was making this 15-day journey, she bought things like she bought a pair of binoculars for herself. She bought a lot of iron bedsteads. She bought linen because she thought that there might not be enough linen and so on and so forth for the hospital. So she kept buying all of these things, and eventually she ended up in Istanbul, or Constantinople as it was known at the time, right? So now she's in Constantinople. So if you see this map, this shows sort of the troop movements. the British and the French and the Turks were on one side and the Russians were on the other. So the Russians are coming down from the top right, and the British and the French and so forth are, going up from the bottom left. And, there are these big, and that little corner there is the Crimean Peninsula. And there were these massive battles there, the Battle of Balaclava, the Battle of Sevastopol, the Battle of Sinope, and so on and so forth. But Florence's hospital was near Constantinople in a place called Scutari, right? So this is sort of one of the largest field hospitals. So she goes there, she sees that there's absolutely nothing. The hospital site is essentially, it used to be a burial ground for the Turks, right? So people are buried there, horses are buried there. There is the sanitation is terrible. There is no drainage. So very often, and it used to be an old barracks. So there are no, there is absolutely no sanitation to speak of. Foul odors are coming in. It is terrible. It's a terrible mess. And along with that, she has no supplies. So she kept fighting to say, okay, I need more bandages. I need cloth for bandages. I need rations for the men. I need, bedsteads. I need all sorts of things, medical equipment, and she had nothing, right? So that's what happened. By October, what was happening is that the British were doing really badly in the war, right? And the British soldiers were not used to the climate, and they were dying terribly. So to begin with, when she started, the mortality rate was 10%. 10% of the people in the hospital were dying every month. Okay, in 3 months, by October, that had become 50%. 50% of the men that were, these were also an army hospital. So 50% of the men that were sort of admitted into that hospital died, right? And again, it's the 1850s, Lister and, Pasteur and all of these guys have just sort of published their, germ theory and so forth. Sanitation is not very well known. Florence really believed in cleanliness, right? She believed in clean air, keeping everything scrubbed clean and so forth. So the main duties her team of 40 nurses sort of had to do was basically, make sure everything was scrubbed. So they would day and night just scrub the floors, clean the windows. She got some special funds from newspapers in the United Kingdom, and they took a house and they set up a laundry there, because one of the big things that used to happen is that these men would basically be in one shirt for like 30 days, right? No one was cleaning their laundry, or, they didn't have clean clothes. They didn't have clean bed sheets. They had nothing. So she set up a laundry, and she said, we need a boiler, and she would sort of, go out and clean. She would set some people to clean and provide clean clothes. She sort of tried to change their diet and get them better food. She fought a lot with the army to get more money for these people, and so on and so forth. So a lot of her work at this time was not actual nursing, but sort of administration, right? Fighting with the officials, getting more money, getting more resources, just making sure that there was a system of heating and ventilation, changing the design of the hospital, and so on and so forth. So she did a lot of that. That was sort of her field experience. Again, remember, she is a 34-year-old woman with absolutely no experience of doing this. She's dealing with these army generals, who are established leaders in a massive sort of organization with a lot of power, and she's fighting tooth and nail against them to try and get some resources, right? So it was a very tough time, but she was reasonably successful. Over time, the mortality rate dropped down to 20%. She kept writing to the government to set up a sanitary commission, because she was absolutely sure that the cause of all of this mortality was sanitation, right? Basically, that things were not clean, infections were not being controlled, and so forth. So a sanitary commission came in. Eventually, they were worn down by Florence and her persistence, and they came in and they made some recommendations. Those recommendations were acted upon, and eventually the mortality rate dropped. So finally, the Crimean War ended. What Florence could do in all of this time was, she should do all this administration, and at the end of her rounds, at the end of the day, she would go around looking at the patients, talking to them, with a lamb. It was late in the evening by the time she could do this because she was working 20-hour days. And so the legend of the Lady of the Lamb was founded, right? Some newspaper picked up on it. It became a big thing in the UK. She became sort of a national hero. Queen Victoria sort of felicitated her. She got the Order of Merit, which no woman had sort of got before, etc. What she also got was she got sick, right? So there's something that was known in those days as Mediterranean fever. She got that, and for the rest of her life, she was never to be completely healthy. In fact, she did a lot of her work bedridden. She was bedridden for more than 20 years or so. She was very, very sick, absolutely racked with pain. It all started in the Crimea when she was 35 years old. And that was sort of her personal sacrifice for all of this. Despite all of the pain and the ill health and so forth, we know what she accomplished after. So anyway, so that's the Crimea. That's like a picture of what these hospital wards would be like. A lot of men crowded into one space. So eventually, over time, she sort of tried to change all of this, change hospital design. That was one of her big sort of contributions to healthcare. I'm going to talk now about her contributions to the army and to healthcare in general outside of the Crimean War, right? So the Crimean War ended. She came back to England. She was a national hero. By this time, what had happened is that a lot of people in the army had figured out that there was no army medical corps at that time, right? There were some hospitals. People would just sort of send people over. There were no nurses in these hospitals. It was a mess. There was no professional sort of thing. And so they decided that something had to be done about the health of the army. And they said, look, who's got to be on this commission? And someone said, Florence Nightingale has just come back from the Crimea, where she did such a good job. She should probably be on the commission. But then women were not allowed on government commissions. Women didn't have the vote. They were not allowed to have a say in anything. They couldn't work, and they couldn't be on government commissions. So what do you do? But she was the foremost expert. So anyway, they decided to have her as an unofficial member of that commission. And, there was a sort of more official committee. And Florence, in her own way, she was a massive researcher. So she never sort of just went and it was not okay for her to just listen to someone's opinion and take that as the truth. She would always do her own research, right? So she went, the point of this commission was to see how the health of the army could be improved. So she went and did a massive amount of research, right? A lot of that research was statistical. She got numbers, she was friends with a lot of statisticians. She figured out how to, calculate numbers and so forth. And so this diagram that you see on the screen right now is one of her pioneering efforts at data visualization. So essentially, from all the research, what she figured is that the leading cause of death in the army is not war, it is disease, right? So the British Army was not always at war, and even when they were at war, people were not dying of wounds in the battlefield, but they were dying of disease. They were dying of cholera and typhoid and things like that. They were not dying of battle wounds. And essentially, they were dying of cholera and so forth because, sanitation was very, very poor. No one was taking care of them. The diets were poor and so on and so forth, right? So she saw this in the numbers, but she had to go and convince people that, look, this is what is happening to your army, right? Your army is basically depleting, not because you're fighting a lot of wars and they're dying in the battlefield, but because you don't take care of your soldiers. So you have to give money to take care of your soldiers. You've got to, have hospitals for them. You've got to have sanitation. You've got to teach them to stay clean while they're on the march and so on and so forth, right? So this is known as, Florence Nightingale's Rose diagram. And, if you just focus on the one on the right, you will see that each of those sort of little wedges is a month. And the blue portion shows the number of deaths from disease. The black portion shows the number of deaths from other causes. The pink portion shows the number of deaths from battle, right? So as you can see, it's a very clear sort of visual saying that the number of deaths from disease far exceeds the number of deaths from anything else, right? So this is sort of her pioneering data visualization effort. She fought a lot for this. Once she showed this diagram, people were like, yes, now I get it. If you're showing me numbers in this way, I get what you're saying. And there was massive army reform, and a lot of changes happened in the army. They set up hospitals, the Army Medical Corps was formed, so on and so forth, right? Once she did that, she set up, in the St. Thomas's Hospital, the Florence Nightingale Training School for Nurses, which was the first sort of professional secular nurses training school. Before this, it used to all be religious. There was no religious denomination here. She created sort of a hierarchy. She said, here's what a matron does, here's what a sister does, here's what a day nurse does, etc., etc. This is still in operation. It's a museum now. If you're ever in London, please go visit. It's the Florence Nightingale Museum as well, and it's now in King's College Hospital in London. This is a picture of Florence Nightingale in 1886. She is 76 years old. This is a graduating class of nurses. In fact, she was, I think, if I remember right, she was the one who suggested that nurses should have uniforms. So, as you can see, the early batch of nurses in their uniforms with Florence Nightingale right in the middle, right? One last thing that I want to talk about is her sort of interaction with India, right? Now, the stuff that I've put up there, you don't have to read it. I'll talk about it. It's all from the book. It's actually direct quotes from the book. She was very interested in India because she saw that, in those days, the British were in India. There were a lot of famines, right? Every year we used to have massive famines. And, close to 30 million Indians died in British India because of famine, right? And this happened all the time. Until 1947, we were always having famines, right? And then, through various sort of schemes of the government and so on and so forth, we made sure everyone was getting food grains to eat. But all through British rule in India, we died basically of not having food to eat. And Florence Nightingale was very disturbed by this. And she said that this is ridiculous. If we are governing a country, you cannot allow people to die. And she delved very deep into it, right? She got really deep into it. She is said to have had more knowledge about Indian affairs than the India Office and the War Room, right? So she was a source of advice to any governor or any any administrator who wanted to do anything good in India. She said that the British government had to do two things. One is that massive irrigation schemes had to be started in India, because basically people were dying because the land was not irrigated and they couldn't sow enough. And second, she wanted to reform the land system. She wanted to take away the zamindar. She wanted to bring Panchayati Raj back. So there actually, she's written letters about the panchayat system. She actually studied ancient Indian panchayat systems and wrote detailed letters about it. And today, if you go past, if you're on the Godavari, and if you're at the sort of mouth of the Godavari, there is this thing called the Cotton Barrage. I'm sure many of you might have gone there. The Cotton Barrage is named after Sir Arthur Cotton, who was a great ally of Florence Nightingale. He took a lot of advice from her, and he created this massive irrigation system. There used to be a lot of famines in that area at the mouth of the Godavari. And after the Cotton Barrage was started, the famine stopped, because it is India's, one of the leading rice producing areas in India. Florence had a hand in that. So she corresponded with this young lawyer from Calcutta called Prasanna Kumar Sen. Lots of letters. He used to give her detailed information about what was happening. So she did all of that for the rest of her life. She did all of these reforms. The other thing she did is she insisted that every house in England should have its own personal sanitation. Before that, no houses had personal sanitation. So she said sanitation is so important. Every house has got to have it. So in a way, she was responsible for increasing, so the longevity of an average British human being increased by 20 years in the years 1870 to 1920, 1930. And Florence Nightingale had a lot to do with that, right? So those are just some of the facts that fascinate me about her. That's a portrait of her when she was very young. I can go on and on, but I think I should stop because we're almost out of time probably. I'm happy to sort of, answer any questions. I'm sorry if I went on for too long, but I'm quite fascinated with Florence Nightingale. So there it is.
Thank you, Preetha. If we can stop sharing, open the floor for any interactions or questions. So, first of all, let me say a big thank you for taking us through this such a big book in such a short time. Probably we would not have read all of it. So while you were explaining her life, what she did, and she could have had a much better life if she sat in her very comfortable home, got married, and she could have had, but she was supposed to change history for the world. So NHS England has got this 6Cs model of nursing. They call it 6Cs model. That's the model they have taken. So there are 6Cs. I was trying to, when you were sharing the story, I was trying to reflect and see that maybe they have taken the 6Cs from her. Inspiration came from her. So I was seeing the words, number one is care. Very clearly visible in her life that she cares. And she had compassion. That's why she chose this path like a religious person. Usually those days, I'm very sure that only religious people will give up something like that and come to serve people. Traveling 3,000, miles away for 15 days with 40 women in those time. If someone asked me to travel today, I don't know. I will think so many times, even when I was young. Oh, I'll probably say I'll go by flight and, I'll land up there and, I'll try to do something. So compassion was very evident. And the third one, very important one, courage and confidence. And it just talks about courage. And I was thinking even today it is so relevant. If nurses don't have courage, they cannot make much difference. They cannot speak up. Then comes the next one. You can have courage, but if you don't know how to communicate, then there is a problem. And you can see that Florence Nightingale was so powerful in her communication, whether it was in writing. And the diagram that you showed is known as the Rose diagram in statistics. There it's known as the Rose diagram. And the serious statisticians, when they do any webinar, if they want to talk about the history of statistics, they will actually go back to Florence Nightingale and say that's when the Rose diagram was given. And unfortunately, she's not being cited as the pioneer in statistics, but then serious ones, they do talk about her. So that's the fourth one. The fifth one is commitment. I mean, there's nothing to talk about it. You could see her commitment till the time she died, wherever she went, whether it was, England or where she came to India. And the last one was competence. And that reflects the way that she approached. So methodologically, she approached the war, the Crimea. And then when she went back, she was so focused on getting changes. And then the first school of nursing started. I think it was very, very clearly evident that why NHS England has taken the 6Cs model. They can, and I think today all these Cs are very critical for all nurses. And Preetha, I was literally listening to it, and I was telling, okay, I did not know many of the little details that you shared, especially the connection in India, because we know that she came and the first college was started in Madras, the first one, the proper college. And I was trying to see that who was the first, female nurse of India. When I Google, I'm finding it 1891 by Kashibai Ganpat was the first Indian nurse to come for training. And I'm sure by the time, Florence Nightingale's influence was already there. It was under the Bombay Presidency Nursing Association or something. So fantastic legacy that we carry, all of us. And we actually belong to that lineage. So I would like to hear from everybody else, sitting here. How did you find? I'm little disappointed that I was thinking a lot of students, everybody will come to listen to their, founder of modern nursing. It only means either they know too much about her, or they really don't care. They say, oh, she lived so many years ago. What does it matter now? But I think everything matters even today. I mean, if you deep dive the role models, that is how they influence our life. So, anyone here would like to say anything? You can please unmute, come on video, and share what do you think about the review from Preeta. And hats off to you, Preeta, for knowing her so well than many of us. This is really great. I need to go back to her notes once again. I think I will go and read that once more, get inspiration. And I think once in a while it's very important. May 12th is the birthday of Florence Nightingale. That is the Nurses' Day. And we celebrate for weeks, sometimes the Nurses' Month. So everybody celebrates. I don't know whether we know enough of her, on whose birthday we celebrate our profession. So ladies, I don't know if there's any gentleman, I'm not very sure. So like to
Good
share
evening,
something.
ma'am.
Yeah, please.
I'm sorry, I'm not putting on my video. Is that all right, ma'am?
It's okay. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, ma'am, and good evening to ma'am Preeta Chaudhary. Actually, I was proud to have our Florence Nightingale as pioneer, but today I'm proud with the Madam Preeta Chaudhary, because she is the one, she identified, and she is talking about the nursing profession, whom we talk as our mother, about whom we talk as our pioneer. And as she is talking and analyzing her biography, that is really inspiring a lot. So hats off to ma'am for taking this initiative and inspiring us, and inspiring the young generation. I am very sure today they may not hear like many of them, but I am very sure Thankam ma'am is going to keep this record and going to give to everyone. And by hearing you, they will be more encouraged and more inspired. And really, we always talk about Florence Nightingale is pioneer many times, and we really forgot what you on the very beginning mentioned about the statistician, about the mathematician. So says how capable is she? And actually, like we, the nursing profession, the people need to be capable of all this discipline, not only the management, not only the biological science, but also the calculations. Ultimately, that at home we need to have our calculation, we need to know our economy. If we know that a house how to maintain, of course a hospital, and we know in hospital nurses are the main, they're managing everything. They keep counting, they keep recording, but fortunately or unfortunately, we say research we are learning now, statistics we are learning now, but it is long back, as you said, Florence Nightingale did. And so I am very sure that whatever the leadership she had, whatever the laws, and I am really very happy to know that you have mentioned, without having the position that she could influence the government, because many times we look for positions, we look for power. If I would have been, many people talk about, if I could have been minister for the day, I could have changed the world or changed the country, but it is not like that. There is many ways if we can influence one life at a time, one moment at a time, if we can contribute something, and she is the one who could influence the government. And being in army, without in army, she could walk in army, and she developed the rules, she developed the protocols, she made the people follow her rules and protocol. So these are the things that I think we need to talk more and more. I am really very inspired to hear you, that you are coming forward, ma'am, Preeta Chaudhary, that you are really inspiring. And we have to, if we talk more and more, each angle of her life, Florence Nightingale life, will be the inspiration in the diverse direction. Thank you so much, ma'am, Thankam ma'am, for your initiative. Actually, I really wonder, last time when you had the book review, I really missed it. Today also, as it is a little bit hectic for me, I just travel back from Mumbai, a couple of hours back, but I made it a point, moment I saw it, I should not miss it. like, that is really fruitful hearing you. I'm very sure this message will, whatever you shared, Ma'am Preetha Chaudhary, it will go to the many of the young. And thank you so much, Ma'am Gomez, for giving me this opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Unmuna. Dr. Unmuna is an icon of nursing from Northeast. I mean, I don't think that anybody there would be there who don't know who is Dr. Unmuna Borgohain, and she is the Dean Principal of college there in AINE, Asian Institute of Nursing Excellence, I think. So she's there, and she's always a champion whenever I do something. She's there, and she also the students. So as she told, this particular video, once we upload, I'm very sure that it will be there for nurses or nursing students to go back and have a quick look at who was the pioneer in nursing and what are the attributes that she carried. So thank you so much, Dr. Unmuna, for sharing that. Is there anyone else who would like to share something? Otherwise, I just want to say the last few minutes just to talk about Nurse India for 1 second, because I would like all of you to support this endeavor that Preetha, Indrani, and me, we are envisioning that we will create this largest, tech platform for nurses in India. And one place where they can find their, community, they can find their, job opportunities. Employers can post their job requirements, not only national, international. So we are just starting, and we would like to have as many nurses to register on the website. That would be great. And that is www.nurseindia.org. So if you spread the message, that will be great. Now you can see all three of us there. And Preetha looks much more prettier today than the photo, of course. That is Indrani in the center. She's a human resource specialist. She has spent time in the care and hospitals, so she knows healthcare. And of course, you know me, there is nothing more to talk about. I believe in what they are doing. That's why I'm partnering with them. And I thank them for approaching me to work with them on this initiative. And we have a lot of ideas to do for nurses and nursing in India. And I really hope you will support us, all nurses, nursing students, everybody can, register on the platform. And we hope that we will create the link of this video on the platform itself. We are hoping. So thank you so much for everyone joining us, taking this time out on a weekend, on a Saturday. Thank you very much. And coming April, we will have the book review on Starbucks experience. Everybody drinks Starbucks coffee, right? So I'm going to review that book and then decipher the comparison between that book and healthcare. When I read this many years ago, I was really fast. I was in Fortis at that time. So I really was thinking, how can we create Starbucks experience in healthcare? It could be challenging, but it's not impossible. So there are little nuggets of learning that we can take it and apply. So thank you so much for being here. And Preetha, क्या बोलते हैं सहे दिल से कौन सा दिल से सहे दिल से शुक्रिया आपकी.
No, this is shukriya from me. I'm really honored. I mean, all of you distinguished healthcare professionals, and I'm talking to you about Florence Nightingale. So it's sort of a big day for me. But I'm like I said, I was really excited to get this opportunity. Thank you so much, Thankam.
Thank you.
It was great. And yeah, everybody, please support us as we start to do this Nurse India sort of initiative. It's super easy to register, so please do that. Thanks very much for being here on a Saturday evening. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Preetha. And thank you everyone for being here. And we will see you all in April. And have a blessed weekend, and stay healthy, stay happy, and stay proud to be a nurse, who all are nurses. Those who are not, thank you for joining us. Thank you very much, and take care. Shabak khair. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.